Strong men don't cry. Good women never say no. Empaths. They exist to save everyone but themselves. That's the script society writes, and you've been cast in the role since the day you realized you could feel what others feel. Every sigh, every silence, every unspoken tension in the room became yours to carry. And the world applauded, because you made their lives easier while your own soul quietly fractured. But here's the truth the world doesn't want you to hear. Choosing yourself is not betrayal. It's survival. Imagine a candle burning endlessly, its wax dripping faster than the flame can sustain. At first, the room glows beautifully, but in the silence, the candle dies. That is the empath's story, worshipped for their light, forgotten in their exhaustion, collapsing in the shadows when no one is watching. Carl Jung saw this danger with brutal clarity. He spoke of individuation, the sacred process of becoming who you truly are. He warned that living only in service to others is not sainthood, but a slow descent into the shadow, that part of you bury so deep it grows poisonous. To deny yourself in the name of love is to hand your soul over to the very forces that drain you. Society will label you selfish the moment you dare to stop playing the martyr. But selfishness and self-respect are not twins. They are opposites. Selfishness demands more than it gives. Self-respect guards your core, so that when you give, it comes from abundance, not depletion. Tell me, what can an empty well offer the thirsty? What healing can an empath provide when their own spirit is shattered? So the story begins here. The day the empath stops apologizing for their limits. The day they say no without trembling. The day they sleep without guilt, breathe without shame, and carry only what truly belongs to them. To outsiders, it will look like rebellion. To the empath, it will feel like resurrection. And that resurrection, raw, defiant, unapologetic, is the first taste of freedom. Freedom begins with that first shocking realization. You are not required to burn for everyone else. But the moment you dare to choose yourself, another truth surfaces. The sheer weight you've been carrying all along. It's like stepping out from under a heavy raincoat, only to notice how soaked and exhausted you truly are. The empath's life is one of invisible burdens. And these burdens are not always chosen. They are absorbed. If you've ever wondered about the signs you are an empath, here is one. You walk into a room and instantly sense its atmosphere, even before a word is spoken. The tension clings to your skin, the unspoken sadness lodges in your chest, the anger pulses in your veins. For most people, an awkward silence is just an empty moment. For an empath, it is a scream echoing inside their body. This is not imagination. It is empath psychology in its rawest form. The nervous system tuned like a finely crafted instrument, registering every vibration, whether it belongs to you or not. Carl Jung would call this a dangerous merger with the collective unconscious. Instead of distinguishing what is yours from what is not, you blur into the whole, carrying pieces of everyone's shadow. And that is where the weight multiplies. When the empath lacks emotional boundaries, the world quietly recruits them as its savior, its therapist, its silent container. A toxic person rarely has to ask for help. The empath already feels their need, already bends, already sacrifices. And yet the more you give, the more they take. This is why so many empaths eventually ask themselves, how to deal with toxic people. The answer is not in rescuing them faster, nor in absorbing their pain more deeply. The answer begins with recognizing that trauma and empathy are often intertwined. Many empaths were once children who felt responsible for the moods of their parents. The inner child and empaths are connected through those early lessons. If I keep mom happy, maybe she won't leave. If I calm dad down, maybe the storm will pass. That conditioning hardens into adulthood, where every sigh, every conflict, every hint of disappointment becomes your duty to fix. And so the empath becomes Atlas, holding up not the sky, but the unspoken emotions of everyone around them. Jungian psychology insists that what is unintegrated will rule us unconsciously. The empath who ignores their own needs will unconsciously seek validation by saving others. It feels noble, but it is actually a chain. This is why shadow work is so critical in the empath healing journey. Shadow work allows you to face that hidden part of yourself, the compulsion to rescue, the terror of rejection, the fear of being unloved if you stop giving. Until you confront those shadows, you will continue to attract relationships where you are the one bleeding so others can breathe. Think about it. Have you ever taken an empath test and been both proud and ashamed of the result? Proud because it confirms your depth of sensitivity. Ashamed because it also reveals how exhausted you feel. That paradox is the hallmark of an empath. The very trait that gives you vision is the same one that drains your life. And unless you learn to balance it, the scales will always tip against you. This is where analytical psychology gives us a lifeline. Jung taught that the journey of individuation, becoming whole, is not about rejecting the collective, but about integrating it without losing yourself. For the empath, individuation means no longer drowning in everyone else's sea. It means learning to stand at the shore, offering a hand when you choose, but never being pulled under. It means knowing when to enter someone's storm and when to let the lightning strike without making it your wound. There is another secret Jung left us: synchronicity. Those meaningful coincidences that appear when you align with your true self. Many empaths experience synchronicity once they start setting boundaries, doors opening, unexpected friendships forming, sudden relief where before there was constant heaviness. It is as if the universe itself whispers, "Finally, you are walking your own path." Healing for empaths is never only internal. It reshapes reality around them. But let's be honest, laying down the world's weight feels almost like betrayal. Saying no feels cruel. Walking away from toxic people feels heartless. And yet, what is truly cruel? To abandon yourself endlessly, or to finally protect your own soul? Think of it this way: when you silence your needs, you do not erase them. You only bury them, where they fester. The unconscious mind never forgets. It builds resentment, exhaustion, even illness, until you finally face what you've suppressed. So the empath's invisible burden is not just what others dump on them. It is also the refusal to admit their own limits. Healing for empaths begins when they stop denying that they, too, are human. That they, too, deserve peace. That they, too, are allowed to choose themselves without apology. And this is the turning point that links us back to the first truth. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It is how you put down the world and finally breathe again. Only then can the empath walk lighter, freer, no longer Atlas holding up everyone's sky, but an individual standing tall, rooted in their own ground. Carl Jung understood something that most of the world still resists. The tension between the self and the collective is not a small struggle. It is the battle for your soul. For the empath, this battle is lived every single day. You feel the pull of the collective unconscious, the invisible web of emotions, wounds, and desires that binds humanity. And yet you also feel the faint voice of your own self, begging not to be drowned in the noise. This is where the empath's deepest crisis unfolds. On one side, the call of compassion. On the other, the cry for survival. Highly sensitive people often interpret this conflict as weakness, as though their inability to carry the entire world is proof that something is broken in them. But in truth, it is not weakness. It is the universe pointing them back toward individuation, back toward the sacred path of wholeness. Think of an empath trapped in toxic relationships, endlessly giving while receiving only silence or cruelty. Often this pattern is rooted in narcissistic abuse, where the empath becomes the perfect supply, absorbing the other's emptiness without ever being replenished. Jung would argue that this is not random. The unconscious mind repeats what is unresolved, seeking healing through repetition. But unless the empath recognizes this pattern, the cycle becomes a prison. And here is the paradox. The more you sacrifice yourself for the collective, the less you actually contribute to it. A broken empath is not a savior. They are a ghost. True contribution comes only after deep healing, after the empath stops bleeding and starts choosing. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole. It requires withdrawing projections, facing the shadow, and reclaiming the pieces of yourself you gave away. Many empaths describe this as a spiritual awakening, a moment when the illusion shatters. Suddenly, you see that your worth was never tied to how much pain you could absorb. You realize that love does not demand self-erasure. You feel a shift, subtle at first, but undeniable, your soul aligning with its true path. This is not selfishness. This is soul alignment. From this place, trauma recovery becomes possible. You begin to rebuild the parts of yourself that you left behind in childhood, the silenced voice, the buried anger, the forgotten dreams. This is self-healing in its purest form. The courage to touch the wounds, not to bleed again, but to close them. And as you heal, you find something astonishing, emotional resilience. The storms still come, but you no longer shatter with every wave. This is the essence of empath survival. Not merely enduring, but transforming. Protecting your energy does not make you cold. It makes you clear. Setting empath protection strategies, silence, distance, boundaries, is not rejection of others, but affirmation of yourself. Jungian psychology teaches us that the true gift of the empath is not to merge endlessly with the collective, but to integrate it consciously, choosing when and how to engage. The dilemma, then, is no longer between self and collective. The real question becomes, how do I carry the world without losing myself in it? Jung's answer was individuation. Your answer is inner transformation. To choose wholeness over martyrdom, clarity over chaos, life over depletion. And here lies the hidden key. When you choose yourself, you do not abandon the collective. You strengthen it. Because a healed empath radiates more light than a broken one ever could. Your alignment, your growth, your freedom, they ripple outward. That is psychological growth at its core, when tending your own soul becomes the most profound gift you can offer the world. Every empath has a breaking point. For some, it comes quietly, in the middle of an ordinary day, when they realize they are bone-tired of apologizing for existing. For others, it arrives like a storm, sudden, violent, impossible to ignore. This is the moment of enough. The day the empath whispers, or sometimes screams, no more. Psychologists call it emotional burnout. Jung would call it the confrontation with the shadow. But for the empath, it feels like drowning until they choose to stand. One story echoes this power vividly, the life of Princess Diana. Diana Spencer never asked to be a symbol. She was only 19 when she was thrust into the royal machine, expected to embody grace, obedience, and silence. The world adored her smile, her beauty, her compassion, but few understood the suffocating loneliness behind palace walls. Her marriage to Prince Charles, celebrated as a fairy tale, quickly revealed itself as a story of betrayal and coldness. Charles's long-standing affair with Camilla was an open wound, and Diana, the empath, absorbed that humiliation in silence. For years she carried the unbearable weight of appearances. She played the part of the perfect princess, while inside she battled depression, eating disorders, and the aching sense of being unloved. She was expected to endure, to never speak out, to represent duty above all. That is the empath's curse, to bleed invisibly while the world applauds your light. But Diana reached her breaking point. She decided that silence would no longer define her. In her famous 1995 Panorama interview, she dared to reveal the truth. There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. With that single sentence, she shattered decades of secrecy. She risked reputation, image, even her position in the royal family, but she chose authenticity over illusion. That was her empath's rebellion, to choose herself, even at unimaginable cost. This decision had consequences. She lost her official royal status. She was branded as unstable by some, criticized for exposing too much. Yet, for millions watching, Diana became something else, the voice of the voiceless, a woman who dared to say enough. Her empathy did not die, it transformed. She poured it into her humanitarian work, visiting AIDS patients when the stigma was crushing, comforting children in war zones, shaking hands with those society rejected. Diana's story is not just tragedy, it is transformation. She showed what happens when an empath stops sacrificing their soul for appearances and begins to live as their authentic self. She faced the shadow of betrayal and humiliation, but she turned that pain into purpose. Her choice to speak out, to break the silence, still echoes decades later. This moment is not weakness. It is psychological liberation. The empath's basta is not about abandoning people, but about abandoning the lie that their worth is tied to endless sacrifice. It is about looking in the mirror and seeing, perhaps for the first time, the authentic self staring back, bruised, tired, but unbroken. The toxic dynamics that once ruled your life no longer have the same grip once you reach this threshold. The manipulative friend who always guilt trips you, the partner who feeds off your forgiveness, the family member who calls your boundaries selfish. They all lose their power when you finally say no. Because in that no, you are not rejecting them. You are reclaiming yourself. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious mind will repeat suffering until it forces us to awaken. The healing journey of the empath is marked by these cycles of pain that intensify until the soul can no longer bear silence. The breaking point is not the end. It is the door. Behind it waits empowerment, the discovery that your sensitivity is not a curse, but a compass. That your tears are not weakness, but cleansing. That your heart, once trampled, can beat again with fire instead of fear. Think of the empath's breaking point as a kind of emotional rebirth. The old self, the pleaser, the martyr, the silent absorber of pain, dies in that moment. What rises is not hardness, but clarity. You see the patterns for what they are. You stop mistaking loyalty for chains. You stop mistaking tolerance for love. You stop mistaking exhaustion for virtue. This is the sacred paradox. The empath reaches their most powerful state not when they save everyone else, but when they finally save themselves. In that moment, the empath moves from survival to sovereignty, from ghost to presence, from brokenness to reclaiming power. And the world notices. Just as Diana's voice became a rallying cry for countless people who felt trapped in silence, your choice to stop playing the martyr becomes a mirror for others. Your self-worth becomes contagious. Your courage becomes a guide. And without realizing it, your no more becomes the very light someone else needs to begin their own healing. This is the mystery of the empath's awakening. The very moment that looks like collapse is actually the first true step toward freedom. And that freedom, raw, fierce, unapologetic, is what transforms not just your life, but the lives of everyone who witnesses it. The empath's greatest lie is that saying no makes them cruel. From childhood, you were trained to equate kindness with compliance, love with sacrifice, and loyalty with silence. But here is the hidden truth. Every no you speak is also a yes to your soul. Carl Jung reminded us that what we repress will eventually dominate us. If you repress your need for rest, it becomes burnout. If you repress your anger, it becomes illness. If you repress your longing for authenticity, it becomes despair. Saying no is not rejection, it is integration. It is facing your shadow and declaring, I matter too. Think of boundaries as sacred architecture. A house without walls cannot protect those inside. A life without emotional boundaries cannot protect the heart that beats within it. Every time you say no, you are building walls strong enough to keep you safe, yet with doors wide enough to let love in. That is empath protection at its core, not isolation, but discernment. And this is not just theory. It lives in the ordinary moments of your day. Saying no is refusing the phone call that drains you at midnight. It is closing your laptop after 10 hours, even when the emails keep coming. It is telling a toxic friend, I cannot hold your chaos anymore, without guilt. It is leaving a room where the energy suffocates you. These are small choices, but together they become a revolution. The beauty is that each boundary strengthens your inner strength. At first, it feels terrifying. Your voice shakes. Guilt gnaws. You imagine being abandoned for daring to protect yourself. But then something unexpected happens. The world does not end. Instead, you feel lighter. You sleep deeper. You discover pockets of joy you thought were lost. And slowly, you realize that people who truly love you respect your no, because they value the self you are finally choosing. This is part of the empath's healing journey. Trauma recovery is not just about reliving the past. It is about rewriting the present. Each boundary you set repairs the damage of years spent erasing yourself. It tells your inner child, you are safe now. You don't need to carry everyone else. And in that assurance, you begin to experience psychological growth. Saying no is not a wall between you and others. It is a bridge back to yourself. It transforms empathy from martyrdom into wisdom. It shifts love from depletion into balance. It allows you to walk into the world not as a ghost, but as a soul fully alive. That is empowerment in its purest form, not dominance over others, but sovereignty over your own life. So let this be your sacred practice. Whisper a small no every day, to a demand that suffocates, to a request that violates your peace, to an expectation that drains your joy. With each refusal, you are not shrinking your life, you are expanding it. Because in protecting your soul, you create space for love, creativity, and freedom to flourish. The empath's salvation does not come from saving the world. It comes from saving themselves, one boundary at a time. And in that act, they discover the paradox. By saying no to what harms them, they finally say yes to what heals them. And nothing is more sacred than that. When the empath learns to say no, they are not just protecting their time, they are creating space. Space where the noise of constant demands no longer drowns out their own voice. And in that space, something unexpected begins to grow, silence. But not the silence of repression, where pain festers unspoken. This silence is different. It is chosen. It is sacred. It is the silence that heals. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious mind speaks in whispers, dreams, symbols, synchronicities. You cannot hear those whispers in the constant noise of others. You hear them only in solitude. That is why silence becomes revolutionary for the empath. It is the space where you finally meet yourself again. In silence, you remember that you are not just an absorber of chaos but a carrier of light. You discover that solitude is not loneliness. It is alignment. It is in these quiet moments that the empath begins true self-healing. This is not escape. It is resistance. In a culture that demands your constant availability, protecting your silence is an act of power. It is the empath's way of saying, I am not here to be consumed. I am here to exist whole. And in that quiet defiance, you discover the most radical truth of all. Peace is not weakness. Peace is strength sharpened into stillness. Small Blue Diamond Conclusão, de Motia Guia. The empath's story is not one of endless sacrifice, though for years it may have felt that way. It is the story of someone who once believed their worth depended on how much of themselves they could give away, how much silence they could endure, how many battles they could fight on behalf of others. But when the mask of martyrdom cracks, what emerges is something infinitely more powerful. The realization that true love begins with carrying yourself first. This awakening is not a rejection of the world. It is the birth of authenticity. Carl Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. For the empath, this becoming means stepping out of the shadows of people-pleasing and walking into the light of truth. It means understanding that protecting your own soul is not selfish. It is sacred. The moment you learn to say no, the moment you embrace silence as medicine, you are no longer the exhausted healer. You are the whole self, finally visible, finally alive, finally free. And here lies the paradox. The moment you stop disappearing into everyone else's pain is the moment you become a true light in the dark. Not as a ghost weighed down by the world, but as a guide who shows others what freedom looks like. Pain, once your prison, becomes your teacher. Silence, once your sentence, becomes your sanctuary. And the boundaries you once feared become the very framework of your rebirth. So ask yourself now, Are you still carrying what was never yours, bending under the weight of borrowed storms? Or are you ready to lay it down, to choose yourself, and finally walk free? The choice may look like rebellion to others, but to you it will feel like resurrection. And in that resurrection, you will discover the deepest truth of all. When you choose yourself, you give the world the gift of your authentic self, whole and unbroken. If this message spoke to your heart, I'd love to hear your voice in the comments below. Share your story. Your journey may be the spark someone else needs. And if you found meaning here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Together, step by step, we are building a sanctuary where empaths can stop apologizing for existing and start choosing freedom without fear.